I'd taken the trash bag out of the kitchen can like I always do, tied it off with that lazy twist I've done 1,000 times, and was headed out to the bin by the garage. That's when I realized the bathroom upstairs hadn't been emptied in a while, and if I didn't do it, it'd start to smell. So I backtracked. I went into our master bathroom, the one we used to share like a couple that actually enjoy being around each other. I reached down, grabbed the liner, and something shifted beneath a bunch of tissues. I don't know why I noticed it. Maybe it was instinct or just a trick of the light, but something made me stop. I peeled a couple of those tissues back, and that's when I saw it. White plastic. Slim, like a marker. 2 pink lines. Now, I might be a small-town guy, but I know what a pregnancy test looks like. And I damn sure know what 2 pink lines mean. I just stood there, holding that little piece of plastic between my fingers like it was some sort of cursed object. My first thought wasn't even about betrayal. It was confusion. We weren't trying. In fact, we hadn't even been close in. God, months. 3, maybe 4? Time had gotten hazy. Work stress, she'd said. Then migraines. Then needing space. One excuse after another, stacking like bricks until the wall between us felt too thick to break through. I remember setting the test down real gentle on the edge of the sink like it might explode. My heart was pounding, not fast, just heavy, like it had bricks tied to it. There was no name on the test, no receipt or box to link it directly to her. But I didn't need it. Rachel was the only woman in this house, and I hadn't touched her in what felt like a lifetime. I stared at my own reflection in the mirror above the sink. I looked tired. Not the kind of tired a nap can fix, but worn out from something deeper, like I'd been running on empty for so long, I didn't realize the tank was already dry. Part of me wanted to storm downstairs right then and ask her what the hell was going on. But I didn't. Not because I was scared, but because I knew Rachel. She's sharp, always 3 steps ahead. If I came at her with nothing but a stick and a guess, she'd talk me in circles until I was apologizing for taking out the trash wrong. No, I needed more than a hunch. So I did something I didn't think I had in me. I put the test back. Carefully. I rearranged the trash exactly how I'd found it, like I'd never seen a thing. The tissues went back over it. I even made sure the little shampoo bottle was angled the same way. Then I tied the bag, set it down outside the bathroom door, and walked away. Downstairs, she was making coffee like any other morning. Her hair was still damp from the shower, and she was humming some song under her breath, tapping her phone with one hand. She didn't even look up at me when I came into the kitchen. I sat at the table, phone in my hand, pretending to scroll while my brain screamed. She slid a mug across the counter, like always. "Coffee's fresh," she said. "Thanks," I replied, my voice calm, like I wasn't holding a storm behind my teeth. She didn't notice a thing. Not the shake in my hands. Not the tight way I was clenching my jaw. Nothing. And that told me everything I needed to know. Because when someone hides something that big, and they still have the nerve to act like it's just another Tuesday, that means they think you're blind. Or dumb. Or both. But I'm not either. I'm just a man who took out the trash and found the truth staring back at him. I didn't sleep much that night. I laid in bed with Rachel snoring lightly beside me, her back to me like always, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slow and steady above. Every sound in the house seemed louder than usual, pipes ticking, floorboards settling, even the hum of the fridge downstairs. My thoughts were louder still, crashing into each other like waves in a storm. There was no peace. Just a deep ache that sat heavy in my chest. When morning finally rolled around, I was already dressed and downstairs before the alarm went off. Rachel came down half an hour later, wearing a gray pencil skirt and a white blouse I hadn't seen in a while. She looked sharp. Too sharp for another day in the office. Her hair was curled at the ends, her makeup a little more done than usual. She even wore perfume, the kind she used to save for special occasions. She made coffee and checked her phone more times than she looked at me. "Big day at work?" I asked casually, trying not to sound too interested. She smiled without showing her teeth. "Yeah, just meetings back to back." I nodded like it made perfect sense, but my gut told me otherwise. She left around 8:05 a.m., kissing me on the cheek on her way out like she hadn't just shattered the foundation of our marriage. I waited a few minutes, long enough to make it seem like I was just going about my day. Then I grabbed my keys and headed out. I didn't tail her like in the movies, swerving and ducking behind delivery trucks. I just kept a good enough distance not to be obvious. My old Camry doesn't stand out, which helped. She took the highway like usual, heading toward downtown, and I almost convinced myself she might really just be going to work. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was a sane explanation for all of it. But then she took an exit early. Not the one near her building. She weaved through the nicer part of town, tree-lined streets and old brick homes turned into boutiques and cafes. She pulled into a small parking lot beside a place called Maison de Lune. I'd passed it before but never been inside. Looked fancy, like the kind of spot where you don't get out without spending $60 just to feel underdressed. Rachel got out, adjusting her blouse in the car window, then walked in like she'd been there before. I parked a few spots back and waited. 10 minutes later, he showed up. Tall, clean-shaven, maybe early 40s. Navy blazer, dark jeans, brown leather shoes that probably cost more than everything I was wearing. He carried himself like he owned the street, checking his watch, glancing around, like he wasn't meeting someone's wife behind their back. Then he walked inside. I got out and made my way down the sidewalk, slow, keeping my distance. I didn't go in. Instead, I stood just far enough from the front window to get a good look without drawing attention. There she was, in a corner booth near the window, smiling. Not her usual half-smile, either. This was the kind of smile I hadn't seen in months, the one that used to be for me. He sat across from her. They leaned in close, talking like old friends who knew each other too well. She touched his hand once. He laughed and reached across the table like it was the most natural thing in the world. That did it. Right then, I knew. I didn't need words. I didn't need stories. I didn't need her to say a thing. It wasn't a one-time mistake. This was something deeper, something ongoing. You don't dress up and order croissants and espresso with someone you barely know. You don't brush someone's arm and laugh like that unless there's history or plans for a future. I stood there watching until my hands stopped shaking. Then I turned and walked back to my car. So I drove home, windows down, the wind loud in my ears, drowning out the noise in my head. I had seen what I needed to see. Now I had to figure out what to do with it. Hiring a private investigator wasn't something I ever imagined myself doing. That kind of thing felt like it belonged in movies, not in the life of a guy like me. I'm a contractor, plumbing, drywall, the occasional deck job when the weather's right. I deal in things I can see and fix with my hands. But this wasn't something I could just patch up and paint over. After seeing Rachel with that man, watching her smile like nothing was wrong, I knew I needed real answers. Not guesses. Not maybes. Proof. I spent that first night going down internet rabbit holes, trying to figure out how folks even went about hiring someone like that. Turns out, there are a lot more private investigators than you'd think. Most of them had corny websites with old-school fonts and stock photos of trench coats and magnifying glasses. I picked one that looked the least theatrical, a guy named Chuck Danner, out of Fairview, about 30 minutes from me. He answered on the second ring, voice rough like he'd been drinking black coffee since '82. I told him I had a problem and didn't know how to handle it. He told me to come in. Chuck's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a vape store. The carpet in the waiting room was stained and smelled like dust and old folders. But the man himself? Solid. No small talk, no judgment. He listened while I laid it all out. Rachel, the distance, the pregnancy test, the guy at the cafe. You want confirmation, he said, scribbling on a notepad with a stubby pencil. Cold, hard proof. Exactly. All right. I'll need a photo of her, one of the guy if you've got it, and any routines you know about. Work hours, gym visits, book clubs, whatever. I gave him everything I had. That included Rachel's work schedule, the license plate number on her car, even a blurry shot I'd taken of the man at the restaurant. Chuck nodded, made a few more notes, and told me it'd take a couple weeks. The waiting was the hardest part. Every morning, I'd watch Rachel leave, wondering if she was really heading to work or if Chuck would catch her someplace else. She was polite around the house, made dinner a few times, even asked about my day like we were still that couple we used to be. It was hard pretending, but I knew I couldn't tip my hand too soon. Then, one afternoon, Chuck called. Got something for you, he said. Meet me at the office. I drove over, heart pounding like I'd swallowed a drum. He handed me a thick manila folder without saying much. Inside were photos. Grainy, zoomed in, but clear enough to knock the breath out of me. Rachel, outside a hotel near the river. Not once, but 3 different nights. Each time, the same man met her there. Chuck had gotten a clear shot of his face. He even got one of them walking into the building together, her hand resting on his back like they were more than just friends grabbing coffee. He flipped open his laptop and showed me a few short videos. Them laughing by her car. Talking close. Way too close. She ever mention a guy named Peter? I shook my head. Well, that's who he is. Peter Langford. Lives out in Oak Hollow. Works in insurance. Married. He let that word hang in the air. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process it all. So not only had Rachel lied to me, but the guy she was sneaking around with had a wife of his own. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a whole mess of people being dragged into something they didn't ask for. Chuck handed me a printout of Peter's home address, workplace, even his wife's name, Lynn Langford. There was also a log of phone calls Rachel had made to a number registered to Peter. Night calls. Long ones. Some stretching past midnight. It hit me all at once, the way she used to take her phone to the bathroom, how she kept the screen tilted away from me, that odd ringtone I'd only ever heard vibrate under a pillow. All of it made sense now. Chuck tapped the folder. This enough for you? I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said, my voice thick. It's more than enough. I paid him in cash. Worth every cent. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio. Didn't call anyone. I just drove. I thought about the years we'd spent building a life I thought was steady, honest. I thought about how long she'd been looking me in the eye, handing me a plate of spaghetti, or folding laundry, or asking about my day, all while carrying this whole other life behind my back. That night, Rachel made pork chops. Asked if I wanted sweet tea or just water. I looked her straight in the eye and said, water's fine. And I smiled. Because I had what I needed now. Truth. Not guesses. Truth with pictures and names and timestamps. The morning after I picked up that folder from Chuck, I sat in my truck outside the county courthouse for almost an hour. Just sat there. Engine off. Hands resting on the steering wheel like I was trying to stop them from shaking. I watched people come and go, some in suits, some in jeans, some walking like they had all the time in the world. But me? I was there to end a marriage. Or at least start the process of it. A part of me still couldn't believe it had come to this. I walked into the building around 10:15 and found a quiet corner near the legal aid desk. A woman behind a glass window asked if I needed assistance, and I told her I was looking for a good family lawyer. She scribbled down 3 names and numbers and slid the paper through the slot. One of them was crossed out in red ink, and I asked why. That one's retiring, she said. Go with the other 2. I called both lawyers that afternoon from my truck, parked in the grocery store a lot like a man calling in sick to his own life. One didn't pick up. The other, Marissa Dale, answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was calm, professional, but not cold. I liked that. She saw me the next morning. Her office sat above a bakery downtown, the air filled with the smell of fresh bread and icing. It felt strange walking past wedding cakes to talk about divorce, but I guess life's full of irony. Marissa had kind eyes, salt and pepper hair, and a desk that looked like it had seen more battles than most courtrooms. I handed her Chuck's folder, photos, call logs, videos. I didn't even have to explain much. She flipped through everything with the kind of patience that made me feel like I could breathe again. This is strong, she said. You've done your homework. I gave a half smile. Felt like I didn't have a choice. She explained what we'd need to do. File a petition. Serve Rachel properly. Secure finances. Separate anything joint that could get messy later. You're ahead of most folks who come through my door, she said. We started by freezing our joint credit card. Then I opened a new account in just my name and shifted half the checking balance into it. Marissa walked me through every step, told me what I could legally do, what I shouldn't do, and how to keep everything above board so Rachel couldn't come back and claim I was trying to punish her. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal while I laid the groundwork behind the scenes. At dinner, I'd talk about weather and gas prices like I wasn't counting down the hours until the paperwork was ready. She'd show me funny videos on her phone, and I'd nod and laugh like I hadn't seen her in a photo standing way too close to Peter outside that motel by the river. I even started sleeping in the guest room, claiming I was having back issues and needed the firmer mattress. Rachel didn't question it much, probably relieved not to share a bed anymore. That said more than anything else. One night she asked, "Everything okay between us?" I looked at her over my glass of tea. "You tell me." She gave a small laugh, the nervous kind people use when they don't like the direction something's heading. "You've just been quiet lately." "Just work," I said. "Long days." And she bought it. Because she wanted to. Because deep down, she thought she still had control of the narrative. That was her mistake. Marissa filed the papers at the end of the week. She gave me the option to serve Rachel at work or home. I chose home, not to humiliate her, but because I didn't want her spinning stories to coworkers about why a man with a clipboard showed up at her desk. I didn't need her playing the victim. I just wanted clean, silent truth. I kept notes of everything, when the bank accounts changed, when I switched my direct deposit, even when I pulled my name off her car insurance. Quiet moves. Legal. Thought out. Strategic. By the time the paperwork was ready to be delivered, I'd built a firebreak around myself. If she tried to drag me down with her mess, the damage wouldn't reach me. Now, it was just business. Cold, painful business, sure, but necessary. I remember sitting on the porch that night, sipping a cold beer, looking up at the stars while Rachel brushed her teeth inside. She had no clue the ground beneath her was shifting. It took me a full day to build the email. I sat at the kitchen table after Rachel left for work, her usual brisk kiss on the cheek, her hair tied up, coffee in a thermos like it was any other Tuesday. She said she had a strategic team briefing later that morning, whatever that meant in her world of vague job titles and even vaguer explanations. I watched her pull out of the driveway, her SUV shrinking down the road until it turned out of sight. Then I opened my laptop. Her company's website was neat and corporate-looking, lots of stock images of smiling professionals and bold slogans about excellence, transparency, and integrity. I found the HR contact email after a few clicks. It was buried deeper than I expected, which made sense. They probably didn't want just anyone throwing accusations their way. Still, I found it. I crafted the message slow and steady. No cussing. No name-calling. Just facts. I included Chuck's cleanest photos, Rachel and Peter outside the motel, walking into that restaurant, leaning against her car while she smiled like a teenager. I also attached a couple of call logs showing long phone conversations during business hours. And at the end, I wrote one simple sentence. I believe this behavior violates your company's code of conduct. Then I hit send. I didn't feel good about it. But I didn't feel bad either. Rachel had made her choices. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth catching up to lies. She got the call 2 days later. I was sitting on the couch when it came in. She walked in the door looking pale and tired. Didn't even kick off her shoes, just sank into the armchair like the weight of the world had landed square on her shoulders. She didn't say anything right away. I waited. They let me go, she finally said, staring blankly at the carpet. What? Why? I asked, keeping my tone just concerned enough. She shook her head slowly. Something about inappropriate conduct and violating the ethics agreement I signed when I was hired. I nodded like it was a surprise. That's rough. She glanced at me, searching my face like she was trying to figure out if I knew more than I was letting on. But I gave her nothing. Just a quiet look and a pat on the arm as I walked to the kitchen to get us both some water. Inside, my stomach churned. Not from guilt. From the surreal nature of it all. I never imagined this version of us. Me pouring water while she fell apart in the next room. Not from some tragedy of fate, but because of her own damn doing. Next came Lynn, Peter's wife. I'd waited to send her the email because I wanted to make sure I had everything airtight. I found her on social media, Facebook, mainly. From her profile, she looked like a normal, kind-hearted woman. Middle school teacher. 2 kids, a dog named Buster. Family vacation photos, soccer games, birthday cakes. You could see it in her smile. She had no idea her world was sitting on a fault line. I wrote to her the same way I wrote to HR, calm, respectful, straight to the point. I told her I had information about her husband that she deserved to see. I attached the same photos, added some details about the dates and times, and ended with my contact info in case she wanted to talk. She replied the next day. Her message was short. Thank you for telling me. I had no idea. I'm leaving him. Just like that. No drama. No confusion. Just a woman taking her dignity and walking out. That hit me harder than I expected. It made everything feel more real. Not just my life breaking apart, but his too. Rachel didn't know yet. I didn't tell her. I wanted the full fallout to hit naturally. Like rain sliding down a roof until it reached the edge, then suddenly pouring over. 2 days later, she got a message while we were watching TV. Her phone lit up, and I saw her flinch. She picked it up, read something, then slowly stood and walked into the hallway. I could hear her voice through the wall, low and frantic. No names, but it didn't take a genius to figure out who she was talking to. The walls were closing in. Fast. And she knew it. That night, she barely touched her dinner. I offered to take the trash out and she just nodded, her eyes fixed on nothing. I stood on the porch with the bag in my hand, looking out at the yard we'd once planted tulips in together. The place we were supposed to grow old. All that was left now was quiet. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. It happened on a Thursday. Rachel had been moping around the house for days, barely saying a word since losing her job. I kept to myself mostly, just moving through the motions like a man waiting on a storm that wouldn't come fast enough. That morning, she came downstairs dressed like she had somewhere to be, nice jeans, fresh makeup, hair straightened. I didn't ask, didn't have to. She didn't offer anything either, just made toast in silence and walked out the door. She came back that afternoon, face tight, lips drawn like someone holding in a secret that was ready to burst. I was in the garage organizing tools, mostly pretending, really, just needed space from the stale air inside. She walked in holding her phone, staring down like it held the answers to a better world. I went to the doctor today, she said without looking up. I wiped my hands with a rag. That right? I'm pregnant. I leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. She finally looked at me, eyes wide like I was supposed to react with joy or panic or something loud. It's yours, Ethan. The words just hung there between us. I let the silence build. Let her feel it. I know what you're thinking, she rushed on, but we were still together back then. She faltered. We were close that week before your trip. Remember? I gave a soft chuckle, low and tired. Rachel, that trip was 4 months ago. I was gone for nearly 2 weeks. You barely even called. You're wrong, she insisted, stepping closer. Ethan, we were. No, we weren't, I cut in, keeping my voice even. I remember that month clear as day. You had that marketing seminar in Dallas the same week. You left 2 days before I did. I flew to Denver right after. We were in 2 different states. We hadn't even talked for days before that trip, much less been close. She hesitated. Just a blink. But it was enough. The kind of moment where lies hit a brick wall. I stepped around her and went inside to grab my laptop. When I came back, she was still standing there, arms wrapped around herself like a child who'd been caught red-handed. I opened the file I'd saved, the one Chuck had put together, the video from the clinic, grainy but clear. I played it without saying a word. There she was, sitting in the clinic waiting room, Peter beside her. They looked like a couple out of a lifestyle magazine. Laughing, leaning close, whispering back and forth. Then the receptionist called her name, Rachel Langford. I paused the video. That's not your name, I said. Never was. She blinked hard. I must have just. No, I said, stepping closer, voice still low. You used his name, Rachel. You signed in at a prenatal clinic with Peter beside you and claimed it. You smiled when they said it. You didn't even flinch. She was shaking now. A mix of fury and panic, like a house cat cornered in a room with no windows. You followed me? I did. She took a breath, tried to square her shoulders. You have no right. I laughed, cold. No right? You're standing in my garage, in the house I paid for, trying to pin another man's child on me, and you think I'm out of line. I panicked, she snapped. I lost my job. Lynn left him. Everything is falling apart, and I didn't know what else to do. So you thought tying me to the baby would save you? Tears welled up in her eyes. I thought maybe if you believed it was yours, we could rebuild something. Fix it. Rachel, I said, stepping back, you can't rebuild on ashes. Especially when you lit the fire. She broke then. Not a scream or a sob, just this soft crumbling like a wave finally giving up against the rocks. She sat on the edge of the workbench, burying her face in her hands. I let her sit there. After a while, she whispered, I didn't think you'd go this far. You didn't think I'd find out. We sat in silence after that. 2 people who used to know each other. The kind of silence that stretches wide between mistakes and the consequences that follow them. And in that silence, I felt something strange. Not anger. Not pity. Relief. Because now the mask was off. And all that was left was truth. I chose the cafe on purpose. Maison de Lune. The same one I'd seen her laughing in with Peter like the world belonged to them. It felt poetic, in a quiet, personal way. There was no rage left in me. No shouting to do. Just a final chapter to close. I sent Rachel a message that morning. Let's talk. One last time. Maison de Lune at 2. She replied with a simple okay. I wore a plain blue shirt and my oldest jeans. Nothing flashy. Just me, stripped down to what mattered. When I got there, the place looked exactly like it did the day I'd first watched her through the glass, clean tables, clinking silverware, that soft French music playing low in the background. Sunlight filtered through the windows just right, casting long lines across the tiled floor. I picked the same booth. The one in the corner, 2 steps from the back wall. The same one where she'd sat across from Peter, smiling like I'd never existed. She walked in 5 minutes late, sunglasses on, hair pulled back. No makeup this time. Just a black cardigan over a pale blouse, and dark circles under her eyes that hadn't been there before. She saw me, hesitated, then made her way over. She sat across from me, said nothing for a moment. Just pulled her hands into her lap like she needed to hold herself together. "You picked this place," she finally said. I nodded. Figured it was fitting. Her eyes flicked to the window, probably remembering the day the same way I did, only she hadn't known I was watching back then. "So," she said softly, "what now?" I pulled out a folder from my backpack. Not thick, just enough pages to feel solid in your hand. Inside were copies of everything. The private investigator's report. Photos. Video stills. Her emails. Call logs. Even the clinic footage with her using Peter's name. I slid it across the table. She didn't open it. Just looked at it like it might bite. "I already know what's in there," she whispered. "Good," I said. "Because so does my lawyer. And the judge." She blinked hard. "What do you mean?" I leaned back, kept my voice calm. "The court date's set. This isn't a negotiation anymore. This isn't me asking for honesty. It's a conclusion." She reached for the folder, hesitated, then pulled her hands back. "I never wanted it to end like this." "No one ever does," I said. "But you made your choices. I just lived with them." The waiter came by, but we both waved him off. No drinks. No food. Nothing to make this feel like a real conversation. It wasn't. It was a curtain call. "I've lost everything," she said. "My job, my reputation. Peter won't even answer my calls anymore. His wife took the kids and left. I didn't say anything. Just let her words hang there." "And you," she continued, her voice cracking. "You're just walking away." "I didn't walk away," I said, leaning forward. "You pushed. For months. With every lie. Every late night. Every time you looked me in the eye and told me nothing was going on." She stared at her hands. Her shoulders sagged. "I thought I could control it." "That's the problem," I said. "You thought you were smarter than everyone else. But truth has a way of catching up." She opened the folder finally, flipping through the pages without really seeing them. I could tell. Her hands were trembling. "What are you going to tell people?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "I don't have to. The evidence tells its own story." She looked up at me then, really looked, and I saw something I hadn't seen before: genuine fear. Not just of being caught, but of being alone. Of realizing that the world she'd built on lies was nothing but dust. "You win," she said quietly. I stood up. "It wasn't about winning," I said. "It was about the truth." I walked out, the bell above the door jingling behind me. Outside, the sky was clear. Breezy. I stood on the sidewalk for a minute, breathing it in. It felt good, different than I expected. Not triumphant. Just free. Inside that cafe, Rachel sat alone, holding a folder full of the life she'd tried to juggle and failed. A few days after the divorce was finalized, I was sorting through the mail, mostly junk ads and bills, when I saw a plain envelope with a legal seal. My name, typed neatly in the center. No return address. I sat down at the kitchen table, heart thudding like I'd forgotten to pay a bill I couldn't afford. I slid it open. Inside was a letter on crisp stationery and a check for a figure I'd never expected. At the bottom of the page, a signature from Lynn's lawyer. She was thanking me. Lynn, Peter's wife, had received her share of the settlement. Because Peter had violated their prenup, his infidelity, which I had documented and handed to her, had nullified the agreement. No audience, no fuss. Just a letter that said, "Thank you for honoring the truth," and a check that amounted to a small fortune. I stared at it for a long moment. I hadn't asked for it. I didn't send it back. I tucked it into my drawer instead. The life I thought I had, simple, steady, blue-collar, was changing in ways I never asked for, but now couldn't ignore. I was tempted to just walk away then. Let the dust settle. But something gnawed at me. Seeing how easily Richard's worlds had collapsed made me realize how easy it was to hide behind a mask and how much freedom there was when it came off. So, I made a choice. I gathered everything, the screenshots from the clinic footage, still showing Rachel's name on Peter's form, the motel pictures, the call logs, the hotel receipts. I added the HR emails and Lynn's note to round it out. No commentary, no slander. Just the papers, neatly compiled. And I posted them anonymously to the forum Rachel used to visit. This was the place she'd always gone to share how perfect her life was, quotes about love, pictures of sunsets, proud congratulations to friends. I used a throwaway account and a brief note at the top, for those who've seen only part of the story. I submitted it just before midnight. The response was instant. By morning, the thread had exploded, hundreds of comments, shares, echoes. Former acquaintances, coworkers, even folks from her book club, all sharing their shock and dismay. I watched as people I didn't even know unloaded about being surprised, hurt, or dismissed by her lies. Friend lists emptied overnight. Rachel saw it first on her phone at breakfast. I was behind her on the couch, drinking tea while she scrolled. Her face went white. Her hand shook so badly her toast fell onto her plate. She stared at me without saying a word. I didn't flinch. By the end of the day, her old workplace was distancing itself. People stopped returning calls. Invitations stopped coming. Even the Facebook page of her volunteer group posted a notice that due to unforeseen personal matters, she would no longer be participating in upcoming events. No names. But the message was clear. I could have felt guilty. Maybe I should have. But I didn't. I felt clarity. For the first time in months, I wasn't carrying something heavy inside. I'd let the truth loose and watched it do exactly what it was supposed to do. That check from Lynn's lawyer? I never cashed it. I sent it to a small local scholarship fund for tradespeople. If the universe was handing me a gift, I figured I ought to pass it on. I sold the house 6 months later, moved into a modest apartment across town, and started doing what felt right again, line dancing on Wednesday nights, woodworking on weekends, reconnecting with neighbors I'd ignored when life got too complicated. People who once saw me as a bored husband now nodded and waved when I walked downtown. I started making money restoring old furniture and fixing up rental properties. The house where Rachel had stayed? I rented it out and covered my expenses with ease. I didn't keep any of the extra. Didn't need it. I had everything I lost and a little more. I didn't need grand gestures or flashy cars. I just needed honest. And that, I had. The twist? I walked away with the truth and wound up richer in ways I never expected. Because sometimes, when everything you thought was real collapses, what's left standing is the only thing that ever really mattered. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the husband went too far? Or did Rachel deserve everything that happened? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.